A biting gust of wind swept across the snow-covered plains as Zara Galloway realized her terrible mistake. The shortcut back to Trinity, Texas, had become a deadly trap as the wolf pack closed in around her, yellow eyes gleaming with hunger in the fading winter light of 1879. Her fingers trembled inside her worn leather gloves, reaching for the small knife at her belt, a pitiful defense against the circle of snarling predators. The wolves prowled closer, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. Zara's horse had bolted at their first howl, leaving her stranded miles from town with a twisted ankle that throbbed with each heartbeat. The snowdrifts reached her knees, and the temperature was dropping rapidly with the sun. The lead wolf, a massive gray beast with a scarred muzzle, lowered its head and growled, muscles tensing to spring. "Get behind me. Stay close." The deep voice cut through the howling wind like a knife. A tall figure on horseback emerged from the tree line, rifle raised. The man dismounted in one fluid motion, positioning himself between Zara and the wolves. "Move. Slowly." His voice was calm but commanding. Zara shuffled backward, wincing as her injured ankle protested. The stranger never took his eyes off the predators as she positioned herself behind him. He wore a well-worn duster, a wide-brimmed hat pulled low over his eyes, and moved with the easy confidence of someone familiar with danger. "When I fire, they'll scatter," he said quietly. "We'll have seconds to get you on my horse." The lead wolf lunged forward. The rifle cracked, and the snow beside the animal erupted. The wolf jumped back, and the pack hesitated, uncertain. The man fired again, this time over their heads, and the wolves retreated several yards, still watching. "Now," he said, keeping the rifle trained on the pack. He backed toward his horse, a sturdy buckskin that stood stock still despite the commotion. With one arm he helped Zara mount, then swung up behind her in a single motion. The wolves started forward again, emboldened by their retreat. "Hold tight," he murmured, and kicked the horse into motion. They galloped through the snow, the wolves giving chase for several hundred yards before falling back, defeated by the horse's speed. Zara clung to the saddle horn, every jolt sending pain through her ankle. The man's arm remained firmly around her waist, keeping her secure as they rode. Only when the wolves were far behind did he slow the horse to a walk. The snow had begun falling again, thick flakes catching on her eyelashes and melting on her flushed cheeks. "Thank you," Zara said, her voice shaking from cold and fading adrenaline. "I thought I was done for." "You nearly were, madam. What were you doing out here alone with a storm coming?" Zara turned slightly to look at him. His face was weathered but handsome, with a strong jaw shadowed by stubble. Clear green eyes studied her with concern beneath the brim of his hat. "I was gathering herbs for my father's apothecary. I know these woods, but I misjudged the weather and lost track of time. My horse spooked at the wolves and bolted." "You're the apothecary's daughter," he sounded surprised. "Zara Galloway," she nodded, wondering how he knew her name. "Grant Westbrook," he offered. "I've just taken over the old Harrington ranch. Been in town about a month." Zara had heard talk of the newcomer who'd purchased the abandoned ranch 10 miles outside Trinity. Rumors had circulated through town. Some said he was a former gunslinger seeking redemption, others that he was running from the law. Looking at him now, she saw nothing threatening, just a capable man who'd saved her life. "We need shelter," Grant said, surveying the darkening sky. "Storms worsening, and Trinity's too far in this weather. My cabin's just over that ridge." Zara hesitated. Proper young ladies didn't go to strangers' homes unchaperoned, but propriety seemed a foolish concern when weighed against freezing to death. "I don't have much choice, do I?" she said with a small smile. "No, madam, you don't. And neither do I. I'm not leaving you out here." They rode in silence for several minutes, the snow falling heavier around them. Grant's cabin appeared through the veil of white, a sturdy log structure with smoke curling from the chimney. "You left a fire burning?" Zara asked. "Banked it before I left. Habit from years on the trail." He helped her down, supporting her weight as she tested her injured ankle. The pain made her gasp. "That needs looking at," he said, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms. "Mr. Westbrook," she protested. "Faster this way," he replied matter-of-factly, carrying her to the porch. "And it's Grant. Any woman I've carried through a snowstorm has earned the right to use my first name." Despite the pain and cold, Zara found herself smiling at his dry humor. He kicked the door open and carried her inside, setting her gently in a chair by the fireplace. The cabin was simple but well kept, with a few pieces of sturdy furniture, shelves of books, and the lingering scent of coffee and wood smoke. Grant removed his hat and duster, revealing dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. He stoked the fire, added logs, then filled a kettle and set it to heat. "Let's see that ankle," he said, kneeling before her. His fingers were gentle as he removed her boot and examined the swollen joint. Zara tried not to wince. "Sprained, not broken," he pronounced. "But you won't be walking far for a few days." "Days?" Zara's heart sank. "My father will be frantic." "Storm's likely to last through tomorrow. First light after it breaks, I'll get you home." He stood and moved to a cabinet, retrieving bandages and a bottle. "For now, we need to wrap this, get you warm, and wait it out." Zara watched as he efficiently wrapped her ankle, his movements betraying experience with injuries. "You've done this before," she observed. "Too many times to count." He secured the bandage and looked up at her. 8 years in the cavalry teaches a man a few things." "Is that where you were before coming to Trinity?" A shadow passed over his face. "That was a lifetime ago. After that came cattle drives, ranch work, a little of everything." He stood and moved to the stove, giving her a moment to study him. His clothes were worn but clean, his movements economical and purposeful. There was a quiet strength about him that spoke of hardship endured, but nothing of the dangerous gunman town gossip had painted. "You must be hungry," he said, interrupting her thoughts. "Starving," she admitted. Grant smiled, and the expression transformed his serious face. "I can't offer anything fancy, but I make a decent stew. After saving me from wolves, any meal you offer is a feast." While Grant prepared their simple dinner, Zara's thoughts drifted to her father. Arthur Galloway had moved them to Trinity 5 years ago, after her mother's death. The small Texas town had offered a fresh start and a need for his pharmaceutical skills. As a trained apothecary, he'd quickly become essential to the community, with Zara learning the trade at his side. "What has you thinking so hard?" Grant asked, placing a steaming bowl before her. "My father," she admitted. "He worries. Any father would with a daughter like you out in a storm." He sat across from her with his own bowl. "When the weather clears enough, I'll ride to town and let him know you're safe. You do that, of course." He looked surprised she would ask. "I wouldn't leave your family wondering." They ate in companionable silence, the stew warming Zara from the inside. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows and driving snow against the glass. The simple cabin felt like a fortress against the elements. "How did you find me out there?" Zara asked finally. "It wasn't exactly on the main trail." Grant's expression grew serious. "I was tracking that wolf pack. They've been troubling my livestock, heard your scream and followed it. Lucky timing for both of us." He collected their empty bowls. "You should rest. Take the bed, I'll sleep by the fire." "I can't put you out of your bed," she protested. "You're not putting me anywhere, I'm offering." His tone brooked no argument. "Besides, I've slept in worse places than my own floor." Zara didn't doubt it. There was something in his eyes that spoke of hard years, of nights spent under stars and in situations far more dangerous than a storm-bound cabin. The next morning, Zara woke to sunlight streaming through frost-covered windows and the smell of coffee. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't recall where she was. Then memory returned: the wolves, the snowstorm, Grant Westbrook. She sat up, wincing as her ankle reminded her of yesterday's misadventure. Grant had given her one of his shirts to sleep in, and it dwarfed her frame. She spotted her dress and coat hanging near the fire, now dry, mourning. Grant's voice came from the kitchen area where he stood at the stove. "Storm broke overnight. How's the ankle?" "Sore, but better," she said, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. He nodded, setting a cup of coffee on the small table beside the bed. "Breakfast in a few minutes. Then I'll ride to town and let your father know you're safe." "I should go with you." "Not on that ankle. The trail's treacherous after a storm. I'll bring him back with a wagon." His tone was kind but firm. "One rescue mission is enough for the week, don't you think?" Zara had to smile. "I suppose you're right." While Grant prepared to leave, Zara dressed, struggling with her boots because of her swollen ankle. When she emerged from behind the privacy screen, Grant was by the door, buckling his gun belt. "There's more coffee and food on the stove. I've left my rifle by the door just in case." "In case of what?" Zara asked, alarmed. "Probably nothing. But those wolves are hungry and my livestock is well protected. They might be looking for easier pickings." The thought sent a chill down her spine. Grant must have noticed her expression. "They won't come near the cabin," he assured her. "Animals fear fire and human scent. But better safe than sorry." He donned his coat and hat, then hesitated. "I'll be back as quick as I can." After Grant left, Zara found herself alone with her thoughts and the occasional pop from the fireplace. She hobbled around the cabin, curious about the man who had saved her life. The bookshelves held an eclectic collection: volumes on animal husbandry and ranching alongside poetry, history, and even a few novels. A small desk in the corner contained neatly organized papers, mostly regarding ranch business. Nothing revealed much about his past. The only personal item was a small daguerreotype in a simple frame, a young woman with a gentle smile. A sister, a sweetheart. Zara replaced it carefully, feeling like an intruder. Hours passed. Zara had just begun to worry when she heard hoofbeats approaching. She grabbed the rifle, just in case, and moved to the window. Relief flooded her at the sight of Grant's buckskin, followed by her father's wagon. She opened the door as they approached, leaning on the frame for support. Her father, a slender man with spectacles and a neatly trimmed beard streaked with gray, practically leaped from the wagon. "Zara." Arthur Galloway embraced his daughter, his voice thick with emotion. "When your horse returned without you, I'm fine, Papa," she assured him. "Thanks to Mr. Westbrook." Arthur turned to Grant, who was dismounting. "Sir, I cannot express my gratitude. When the storm hit and Zara didn't return." "Anyone would have done the same," Grant replied, uncomfortable with the praise. "Not anyone," Arthur insisted, shaking Grant's hand vigorously. "You must allow me to repay your kindness somehow." "No payment necessary, Mr. Galloway." "Arthur, please." Zara's father looked around the cabin. "You've provided my daughter shelter and care. At the very least, you must join us for supper once Zara is settled at home." Grant hesitated, then nodded. "I'd be honored." The ride back to Trinity was slow and careful. Grant led the way on his horse, occasionally doubling back to check their progress. By the time they reached town, word of Zara's adventure had somehow spread, and several townspeople watched their arrival with undisguised curiosity. The Galloway home and apothecary shop stood on the main street, a two-story building with the business downstairs and living quarters above. As Arthur helped Zara from the wagon, Mrs. Peterson, the dressmaker from next door, hurried over. "Zara Galloway, we've been beside ourselves with worry." Her sharp eyes moved from Zara to Grant. "So this is the mysterious rancher who saved you." Grant tipped his hat politely but said nothing. "Mrs. Peterson, this is Mr. Westbrook," Arthur said, "and we're grateful for his assistance. Now, if you'll excuse us, Zara needs rest." Of course. But the gleam in the older woman's eye suggested Trinity would be buzzing with this story for weeks. Grant declined Arthur's invitation to come inside, saying he had ranch chores waiting. Before leaving, he turned to Zara. "Miss Galloway, I hope your recovery is swift." "Thank you for everything, Mr. Westbrook." Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary, and Zara felt a strange flutter in her chest. Then Grant mounted his horse and rode away, a solitary figure against the snow-covered landscape. "What a remarkable man," Arthur said as they watched him go. "Rather different from the rumors." "What rumors?" Zara asked, though she'd heard some herself. "Oh, the usual nonsense when a stranger arrives. Some say he was a famous gunfighter, others that he's running from the law." Arthur shook his head. "People will talk. What matters is he saved my daughter's life, and for that, he has my eternal respect." Over the following days, Zara's ankle healed and life in Trinity returned to its normal rhythm. She resumed her duties in the apothecary, mixing remedies and serving customers. But her thoughts often drifted to the quiet cabin and its solitary occupant. A week after her rescue, the bell above the shop door jingled, and Grant Westbrook stepped inside. He removed his hat, looking somewhat out of place among the bottles and jars. "Mr. Westbrook," Zara said, surprised. "What brings you to town?" "Supplies," he answered, then added, "and checking on your recovery." "Much improved, thank you." She gestured to her ankle. "Almost good as new." An awkward silence fell between them. Grant cleared his throat. "Your father invited me to supper," he said finally. "I thought I might accept if the offer still stands." "It does," she assured him quickly. "Papa would be delighted." "As would I," she added, feeling a blush rise to her cheeks. "Friday evening, perfect." Grant nodded, replaced his hat, and turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "I'm glad you're well, Miss Galloway." After he left, Zara found herself smiling for no particular reason. Mrs. Peterson, who had witnessed the exchange through her shop window, was inside within minutes. "Well now," the older woman said with poorly concealed excitement, "it seems Mr. Westbrook has taken an interest beyond mere rescue." "He's simply being polite," Zara replied, busying herself with organizing a shelf of tinctures. Mrs. Peterson raised an eyebrow. "Strange. He's been in town 5 times since arriving months ago, and suddenly he's concerned with politeness." Zara chose not to respond, but the observation stayed with her. Friday suddenly seemed very far away. When Friday finally arrived, Zara found herself taking unusual care with her appearance. She chose her best dress, a deep blue that complemented her eyes, and arranged her dark hair in a style more elaborate than her usual practical bun. "You look beautiful," her father commented when she came downstairs. "Our guest should arrive any moment." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. Arthur opened it to reveal Grant, clean-shaven and wearing what appeared to be his best shirt and vest under his coat. He held a small bouquet of winter flowers and a bottle of wine. "Good evening," he said, handing the flowers to Zara. "These grow near the creek on my property. Thought they might brighten your table." "They're lovely," Zara said, genuinely touched. "Please come in." Supper was a pleasant affair. Arthur and Grant discovered a shared interest in local history, and the conversation flowed easily. Zara observed that Grant, though still reserved, seemed more relaxed than she'd seen him before. "How are you finding ranch life?" Arthur asked as they enjoyed coffee after the meal. "Challenging but rewarding," Grant replied. "The Harrington place was neglected for years. There's much to rebuild." "Alone?" Zara couldn't help asking. "For now. I've hired a few local men for the bigger projects, but day to day it's just me." "That must be lonely," she said softly. Something flickered in Grant's eyes. "I'm accustomed to solitude." "No one should become too accustomed to that," Arthur remarked. He stood suddenly. "I just remembered some inventory I must review for tomorrow. Would you excuse me? Zara can entertain you while I'm occupied." Before either could protest, Arthur disappeared into his study, leaving them alone in the parlor. Zara recognized her father's transparent attempt at matchmaking, but couldn't find it in herself to be annoyed. "Your father is about as subtle as a cavalry charge," Grant said with a small smile. "I apologize for his maneuvering." I'm not complaining." A comfortable silence settled between them. Grant studied his coffee cup for a moment, then looked up at her. "Why did you venture out alone that day?" he asked. "In winter, so far from town." "There's a grove of pine trees that keeps its needles year-round. They have medicinal properties best harvested in winter." She shrugged. "I've made the trip dozens of times, but never with wolves about." "No." She shuddered at the memory. "I didn't realize the pack had moved into that area." "They're desperate. This winter's been harder than most." Grant set his cup down. "I've been tracking them, trying to drive them further from settled areas. Alone, that's dangerous. So is gathering pine needles, apparently." His eyes crinkled with humor. Zara laughed. "Touché, Mr. Westbrook." "Grant," he corrected gently. "After all, you've slept in my bed." The moment the words left his mouth, both realized how they sounded. Zara's cheeks flamed and Grant looked mortified. "I didn't mean," he started. "I know," she assured him, fighting a smile. The awkward moment dissolved into laughter, and somehow the tension between them eased. When Grant eventually took his leave, he asked if he might call on her again. Zara found herself eagerly accepting. Over the following weeks, Grant became a regular visitor to the Galloway home. He would ride into Trinity every Saturday, conduct his business, then join them for supper. Sometimes he brought small gifts, a book he thought Zara might enjoy, honey from wild bees near his property, or interesting herbs he'd found that might be useful in the apothecary. March brought warmer weather and the first hints of spring to Trinity. The snow melted, revealing tender green shoots beneath. One Saturday, instead of their usual supper, Grant suggested a picnic by the river that ran near town. "The wildflowers are starting to bloom," he told Zara. "I thought you might enjoy seeing them." Arthur readily gave his blessing, his eyes twinkling as he watched them ride out together, Zara on her mare and Grant on his faithful buckskin. The riverside was indeed carpeted with early spring blooms, tiny blue and yellow flowers pushing through the last patches of snow. They spread their blanket in a sunny spot, and Zara unpacked the basket she had prepared. "It's beautiful here," she said, gazing at the clear water rushing over rocks. "I haven't been to this spot since last summer." Grant stretched out his long legs, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "I found it while tracking deer. Thought it might make a nice change from your father's parlor." Zara laughed. "Are you tired of Papa's interrogations?" "Not at all. I enjoy his company." Grant selected an apple from the basket. "But I wanted you to myself for a while." The simple admission made Zara's heart beat faster. Over the past weeks, their friendship had deepened, but neither had spoken of feelings beyond that. "Tell me about before," she said, gathering courage. "Before Trinity." Grant was silent for so long that Zara thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet. "I was in the cavalry for 8 years, as I told you. Saw things no man should see. Did things." He trailed off, then continued. After I drifted, worked cattle drives from Texas to Kansas, tried my hand at prospecting in Colorado, none of it stuck. What brought you here? Chance. I was passing through, heard the Harrington place was for sale cheap, had enough saved to make an offer. He looked at her directly. I was tired of drifting, Zara, wanted somewhere to belong. The confession hung between them, simple and profound. Zara understood the feeling after her mother died. She and her father had moved so often she'd stopped trying to make friends until they settled in Trinity. And do you, she asked, belong here, beginning to? His eyes held hers. More each day. Something shifted between them in that moment, an acknowledgement of feelings neither had yet named. Grant reached over and took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. I'm not a man with a glorious past or grand prospects, he said. What you see is what I am, a man trying to build something worthwhile. That's all any of us are doing, Zara replied softly. Grant smiled, that rare full smile that transformed his face. You make it sound simple, isn't it? We live, we try, we hope. He leaned closer, and Zara's breath caught. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then a shout from the road intruded, children playing, oblivious to the moment they had interrupted. Grant pulled back slightly, but kept hold of her hand. Perhaps we should head back. Perhaps, she agreed, though reluctant to end their time together. As they packed up the remains of their picnic, Zara noticed Grant watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She asked, self-conscious. I was just thinking how different my life would be if I hadn't heard your scream that day. Mine too, she said softly, though preferably without the wolves. He laughed, and the sound made her smile. Grant Westbrook's laughter was a rare and precious thing. Spring advanced into early summer. The hills around Trinity turned green, and wildflowers bloomed in profusion. Grant continued his Saturday visits, but now he often took Zara riding or walking through the countryside. Arthur, seeing the growing attachment between them, gave his blessing to these outings with a knowing smile. On a warm June evening, Grant invited Zara to visit his ranch. I've made some improvements since you saw it last, he told her. I'd value your opinion. The Harrington, now Westbrook ranch had indeed changed. The cabin had a new porch with chairs facing the sunset. Corrals held cattle and horses, and a vegetable garden flourished behind the house. Everything spoke of care and hard work. It's wonderful, Zara said sincerely as Grant showed her around. You've accomplished so much in a few months. There's more to do, but it's coming along. Pride colored his voice. The cattle are healthy, and I've got good grazing land. In a year or two, this could be a proper operation. Zara noticed he spoke of the future with confidence, something he hadn't done when they first met. As they walked toward a hilltop overlooking the property, Grant grew quieter, almost nervous. At the summit, they paused to admire the view. The ranch spread below them, peaceful in the golden evening light. In the distance, the spire of Trinity's church was just visible. I wanted you to see this, Grant said, gesturing to the panorama, to understand what I'm working toward. It's beautiful, Zara said. You should be proud. I am, but it's incomplete. Grant turned to face her. Zara, I never expected to find someone like you. Never thought I deserved that kind of happiness. Her heart quickened as she recognized the significance of his words. And now I can't imagine a future without you in it. He took her hands in his. I'm not a wealthy man, and this place is far from perfect. But if you could see yourself sharing it, making a life here. Grant Westbrook, Zara said, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. Are you asking me to marry you? I am. His green eyes were earnest, vulnerable, probably too soon and too awkwardly, but yes. Joy bubbled up inside her, bright and irrepressible. Not too soon, and I don't mind awkward if it's sincere. Is that a yes? In answer, Zara stood on tiptoe and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, then deepened as Grant's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I'll take that as a yes," Grant murmured, his forehead resting against hers. "It's definitely a yes." They returned to Trinity as the sun was setting, hands clasped, plans and dreams flowing between them. Arthur was in the parlor when they arrived, reading by lamplight. One look at their faces told him everything. "I see congratulations are in order," he said, setting aside his book. "Papa, how did you know?" Zara asked. "My dear, I may be getting older, but I'm not blind." He rose to embrace his daughter, then extended his hand to Grant. "Welcome to the family, son." "You're not surprised?" Grant asked. "I've been expecting this since the day you rode into town with my half-frozen daughter." Arthur's eyes twinkled. "Though I admit, I thought you might wait until autumn." The engagement announcement caused quite a stir in Trinity. Mrs. Peterson claimed she'd predicted it from the start, while others expressed surprise that the reserved newcomer had won the hand of the apothecary's daughter so quickly. Some, like Sheriff Donovan, were simply pleased to see two good people finding happiness together. About time Westbrook settled down proper. The sheriff commented to Arthur over coffee at the hotel restaurant. "Man works too hard alone out there. Needs someone looking after him." "I believe they'll look after each other," Arthur replied. "And that's as it should be." The wedding was set for September, when the worst heat of summer would be past and before winter set in. This gave them time to prepare the ranch house for Zara's arrival, and for her to help her father train an assistant to take over some of her duties at the apothecary. One evening in late July, Grant arrived at the Galloway home looking troubled. He declined supper, asking instead if he and Zara might speak privately. Arthur retreated tactfully to his study while they sat in the parlor. "What's wrong?" Zara asked, alarmed by his serious expression. Grant took her hands in his. "Nothing's wrong exactly. But there's something you should know before we marry, something about my past." Zara's heart sank. Had the town rumors been true? Was he a wanted man? She steeled herself for whatever might come. "During my time in the cavalry, I was stationed at Fort Griffin," Grant began. "We were tasked with pushing the Comanche onto reservations. It was ugly work." He paused, gathering himself. "In one skirmish, my patrol surprised a small group, mostly women and children. The captain ordered us to fire. I refused." Zara squeezed his hands, encouraging him to continue. "There was a court-martial. I was dishonorably discharged." His voice grew tight. "Some called me a traitor, others worse. I drifted after that, trying to outrun the shame, not of what I did, but of being part of a system that would order such things." "You did the right thing," Zara said firmly. "Maybe. But it cost me everything I had then: my career, my reputation, friends who wouldn't stand by me." Grant's eyes met hers. "I wanted you to know the truth before you tied your life to mine. There may be those who remember, who might make things difficult." Zara reached up to touch his face gently. "Grant Westbrook, you think I would love you less for refusing to harm innocent people? If anything, I love you more for having the courage to stand against wrong, even at great cost." The tension in his shoulders eased visibly. "I should have known you'd see it that way." "Is this why you came to Trinity? To start fresh where no one knew your past?" He nodded. "Partly, but also because I was tired of running from who I am." Zara leaned forward and kissed him softly. "Thank you for trusting me with this. It changes nothing about how I feel or our plans." Grant pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I don't deserve you," he murmured into her hair. "Nonsense," she replied. "You deserve every happiness. We both do." August brought scorching heat and the busiest time for Grant at the ranch. He was preparing for his first cattle sale, which meant long days of hard work. His visits to town became less frequent, though he wrote Zara letters that Arthur delivered when he made his weekly supply run. One sweltering afternoon, Zara decided to surprise Grant with dinner at the ranch. She packed a basket with fried chicken, biscuits, and a jar of preserved peaches, then saddled her mare for the ride. Arthur raised an eyebrow but didn't object. Their engagement had conferred certain liberties that would have been scandalous before. The trail to the Westbrook ranch was familiar now, and Zara enjoyed the solitude of the ride. Grasshoppers buzzed in the tall grass, and hawks circled lazily overhead. As she crested the final hill, she saw smoke rising from the cabin chimney. Grant was by the corral, his shirt soaked with sweat as he repaired a section of fence. He looked up at the sound of hoofbeats, surprise giving way to pleasure when he recognized her. "This is unexpected," he said, setting aside his tools and coming to help her dismount. "I thought you might appreciate a home-cooked meal," Zara replied, lifting the basket. "You've been working too hard." Grant smiled, kissing her lightly. "I won't argue with that. Let me wash up." While he cleaned himself at the pump, Zara set the table on the porch, enjoying the breeze that made the heat bearable. From this vantage, she could see the improvements Grant had made to the property: new fencing, a sturdy barn, fields ready for hay cutting. Soon, this would be her home too. "Penny for your thoughts," Grant said, approaching with damp hair and a clean shirt. "I was just admiring your hard work," she replied, "and thinking how right this feels being here with you. It does feel right." He pulled her close, his arms strong around her waist. "Every time I work on this place, I'm thinking of our future here." They sat together on the porch, eating and talking as the sun began its descent. Grant spoke of his plans for the ranch, expanding the herd, perhaps building a larger house in a few years. Zara shared news from town and her ideas for an herb garden near the kitchen. As twilight deepened, neither seemed eager to end their time together. Eventually, Grant sighed. "I should get you back to town before your father sends the sheriff looking for us." "Papa trusts you," Zara assured him. "But you're right, it's getting late." Grant insisted on accompanying her home, unwilling to let her ride alone after dark. They traveled side by side, their horses walking at an easy pace beneath a sky brilliant with stars. 6 more weeks," Grant said as they neared Trinity. Until you're Mrs. Westbrook and I don't have to say goodbye at your door." The simple statement filled Zara with warmth. "I can hardly wait." September arrived with cooler temperatures and growing excitement about the upcoming wedding. The ladies of Trinity organized a small party for Zara, presenting her with handmade gifts for her new home: embroidered linens, preserved foods, and a beautiful quilt pieced together by several women. "Every new bride needs something special," Mrs. Peterson declared, presenting the quilt with pride. "We all contributed squares, a piece of Trinity to take with you to your new home." Zara was touched by the generosity of these women who had become her friends over the years. "It's beautiful, thank you all. You'll be missed in town," Sarah Jenkins, the schoolteacher, said. "Promise you'll visit often." "Of course I will," Zara assured them. "The ranch isn't the end of the world." "No, but it might feel that way come winter," Mrs. Peterson observed. "Ranch life isn't easy, especially for a woman used to town conveniences." "I'm not afraid of hard work," Zara replied. "And Grant has made the cabin quite comfortable." The women exchanged knowing glances. "It's not just the work, dear," Mrs. Peterson said gently. "It's the isolation, especially for a man like Mr. Westbrook, who keeps to himself." Zara understood their concern but wasn't troubled by it. She had seen beneath Grant's reserved exterior to the caring man within, and while she loved the community of Trinity, she had inherited her father's self-sufficient nature. "We'll be fine," she said confidently. and you'll all be welcome visitors anytime." The wedding day dawned clear and mild, perfect September weather. The small church in Trinity was decorated with wildflowers and ribbons, filled to capacity with townsfolk eager to witness the union of the apothecary's daughter and the rancher from the Harrington place. Zara wore a dress of ivory silk that had been her mother's, altered by Mrs. Peterson to fit her perfectly. Arthur, looking distinguished in his Sunday best, waited to walk his daughter down the aisle. "Your mother would be so proud," he told her, his voice thick with emotion. "You look just like her today." Zara squeezed his arm, too moved for words. Then the church doors opened, and she saw Grant waiting at the altar, tall and handsome in a new suit. His face when he caught sight of her was everything she could have hoped for: wonder, joy, and love all mingled together. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged vows in clear voices, promising to love and cherish one another through whatever life might bring. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Grant's kiss was gentle but fervent, a promise of the life they would build together. The celebration afterward was held in the town square, with tables laden with food contributed by nearly everyone in Trinity. Music, dancing, and laughter filled the afternoon. Arthur presented them with a special gift, a fully stocked medicine chest for their home, with instructions for each remedy carefully written out. "So you can care for each other when I'm not nearby," he explained. As the sun began to set, the newlyweds prepared to depart for the ranch. Their wagon was packed with Zara's belongings and wedding gifts. Friends and neighbors gathered to see them off with good wishes and a shower of flower petals. "Take care of my girl," Arthur said to Grant, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. "With everything I am," Grant promised, shaking his father-in-law's hand. The ride to the ranch was quiet, both of them tired from the day's emotions and activities. As they approached, Zara gasped in surprise. The cabin was illuminated with lanterns, and a banner hung across the porch. "Welcome home, Mrs. Westbrook." "When did you do this?" she asked, delighted. "Had some help from the Jenkins boys yesterday," Grant admitted. "Wanted it to be special for you." Inside, the cabin had been transformed. New curtains hung at the windows, a colorful rug covered the plank floor, and a vase of wildflowers stood on the table. But the most striking addition was a new piece of furniture, a beautiful rocking chair by the fireplace. "Grant, it's wonderful," Zara said, running her hand over the smooth wood. "Made it myself," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "Been working on it evenings these past months. Every woman needs a proper chair for her home." The thoughtfulness of the gift moved her deeply. This man, who expressed himself more through actions than words, had created something beautiful for her comfort with his own hands. "I love it, and I love you." She wrapped her arms around his neck, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. Grant's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer. "Welcome home, Mrs. Westbrook," he murmured against her lips. Their first weeks as husband and wife established the rhythm of their life together. Zara adapted quickly to ranch routine, rising early to prepare breakfast before Grant went out to tend the livestock. She created a functional kitchen garden, preserved food for winter, and made the cabin truly their home with small touches: wildflowers in jars, books arranged by the fireplace, colorful quilts on their bed. Grant found himself smiling more than he ever had. Having Zara waiting when he returned from a long day's work made the cabin feel like the home he'd never truly had before. In the evenings, they would sit on the porch watching the sunset or read to each other by the fire. Sometimes they rode together to check the property, Zara's knowledge of plants complementing Grant's understanding of the land. They visited Trinity regularly, joining Arthur for Sunday dinner and maintaining connections with the community. Zara continued to help at the apothecary when needed, though her father's new assistant, a young man named Edward, was proving quite capable. October painted the hills in russet and gold. The first cattle sale had been successful, providing a cushion for the coming winter. One crisp evening, as they sat by the fire planning improvements for the following spring, Grant brought up a subject that had been on his mind. "What would you think about adding on to the cabin before next winter?" he asked, studying his wife's face. "Perhaps another room or two." Zara looked up from her mending. "That would be nice. Are you thinking of a proper parlor, among other things?" Grant hesitated, then continued. "I was thinking we might need more space. For a nursery, perhaps." Zara's hand stilled. "A nursery, if you wanted, someday." Grant suddenly looked uncertain. "We haven't really discussed children." Setting aside her sewing, Zara moved to sit beside him, taking his hand. "I would love to have your children, Grant, whenever they might come." "Really?" The hope in his eyes made her heart swell. "Of course. I've always wanted a family of my own." She smiled, adding, "I think you'd make a wonderful father." Grant pulled her into his lap, holding her close. "I haven't had the best examples to follow. My own father was." He trailed off, then said simply, "Not kind." "You are not your father," Zara said firmly. "You're a good man, Grant Westbrook. Any child would be fortunate to have you." He buried his face in her neck, and she felt the dampness of tears. This strong, stoic man still had moments of vulnerability that moved her deeply. She held him, stroking his hair until he composed himself. "Sorry," he murmured. "Don't ever apologize for feeling," she told him. "Not with me." That night, their lovemaking held new meaning, not just an expression of desire, but the conscious hope of creating life together. Afterward, as Zara lay with her head on Grant's chest, listening to his heartbeat, she felt a deep contentment. Whatever the future held, they would face it together. November brought the first frost and preparations for winter. Grant worked tirelessly to ensure the livestock had adequate shelter and feed. Zara preserved the last of the garden's bounty and stocked the root cellar with potatoes, apples, and other staples. One morning, Zara woke feeling queasy. At first, she attributed it to fatigue. They had been working hard preparing for winter. But when the feeling persisted for several days, accompanied by a strange tenderness in her breasts, she began to suspect the truth. She waited a week, wanting to be certain before sharing her suspicions with Grant. When her monthly course failed to appear, Zara could no longer deny what her body was telling her. She was with child. That evening, she prepared Grant's favorite meal, venison stew with dumplings. She set the table with their best dishes and lit candles, though it wasn't a special occasion. "What's all this?" Grant asked when he came in from the barn, looking pleased but puzzled. "Can't a wife make a nice dinner for her husband?" Zara replied with an innocent smile. Throughout the meal, she found herself watching Grant, imagining him holding their baby, teaching a child to ride or read. The thought filled her with joy. As they finished eating, Grant noticed her distraction. "You're somewhere else tonight. Everything all right?" "Better than all right." Zara took a deep breath. "Grant, I'm going to have a baby." For a moment he stared at her, processing her words. Then his face transformed with wonder. "A baby, you're sure?" "As sure as I can be. It will be summer before he or she arrives." Grant was around the table in an instant, lifting Zara from her chair and spinning her in a circle. "A baby," he repeated, his voice filled with awe. Then, suddenly concerned, he set her down gently. "Should I not have done that? I don't want to hurt you or the baby." Zara laughed, delighted by his reaction. "I'm pregnant, not made of glass. We're both fine." Grant placed his hand reverently on her still flat stomach. "Hello in there," he said softly. "Your mama and I are very happy to meet you." Tears filled Zara's eyes at the simple, heartfelt greeting. This child would be so loved. We should tell your father, Grant said, and we definitely need to start on that addition to the cabin. There's time, Zara assured him. The baby won't need its own room right away. But Grant was already making plans, his excitement infectious. We'll need a cradle too. I could make one this winter while we're snowed in. I thought you didn't like being idle during winter, Zara teased. This isn't idle, this is preparing for our future. Grant's eyes were bright with purpose. Our family. The word warmed Zara from within. Family. Something both of them had lost in different ways she through her mother's death. He through circumstances he rarely spoke of. Now they were creating their own, bound by love rather than just blood. When they shared the news with Arthur on their next visit to Trinity, his joy was evident. He embraced his daughter, then surprised Grant by hugging him too. This calls for celebration, Arthur declared, bringing out a bottle of fine brandy he'd been saving. He poured a small glass for Grant and himself, and tea for Zara, to new life and the continuation of family. As winter settled over the ranch, bringing snow and long evenings by the fire, Zara found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. If not for that fateful day in the snow, if the wolves hadn't cornered her, if Grant hadn't happened by at that exact moment, none of this would exist. Their lives had intersected at precisely the right time, changing everything. Grant, true to his word, spent the winter evenings crafting a cradle. His large hands worked the wood with surprising delicacy, smoothing and shaping until it was perfect. He lined it with soft flannel and placed it near their bed, though they wouldn't need it for months yet. Just practicing, he said, when Zara teased him about his eagerness. As her body changed, Grant's attentiveness increased. He insisted on doing the heavier chores, brought her tea when morning sickness struck, and read to her in the evenings, his deep voice soothing both her and, she liked to think, their unborn child. Spring came early that year, with March bringing mild temperatures and green shoots pushing through the soil. Zara's belly had begun to round visibly, and she felt the first fluttering movements of life within. "Here," she said one evening, placing Grant's hand on her stomach. "Wait for it." After a moment there was a definite tap against his palm. Grant's eyes widened. "Was that your son or daughter saying hello?" Zara confirmed. Grant knelt before her, both hands cradling her belly. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "We can't wait to meet you." The baby responded with another kick, as if acknowledging its father's voice. Grant looked up at Zara with such love that it took her breath away. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what? For everything. For being in those woods that day. For saying yes when I asked you to marry me. For carrying our child," his voice caught. "For making me happier than I ever thought possible." Zara leaned down to kiss him, her heart full to bursting. "We've made each other happy. That's what family does." As her pregnancy progressed, they completed the addition to the cabin 2 new rooms, one for the baby and one that would serve as a parlor and eventually a bedroom for future children. Grant worked alongside the hired men, directing the construction with careful attention to detail. By June, with the baby due in just over a month, the ranch was flourishing. The cattle herd had grown and the spring calf crop was healthy. The vegetable garden produced abundantly, and Zara had planted herbs both culinary and medicinal. They were prospering, with plans to purchase additional acreage from a neighboring property that had been neglected. On a warm evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies rise from the grass, a rider appeared on the road leading to the ranch. It was unusual to have visitors, especially so late in the day. Grant stood watching the approaching figure. "Stay here," he told Zara, his hand automatically checking that his revolver was in its holster at his hip. The rider drew closer, and Grant relaxed slightly. "It's Richard Jenkins," he said, recognizing the son of Trinity's schoolteacher. "Something must be wrong for him to ride out this time of day." Richard, a lanky youth of 17, dismounted quickly. "Mr. Westbrook, Mrs. Westbrook," he greeted them, removing his hat. "Sorry to disturb you, but Mr. Galloway's taken ill. Doc Pearson sent me to fetch Mrs. Westbrook." Zara rose awkwardly, her advanced pregnancy making quick movements difficult. "How ill? What happened?" "Fever came on sudden this afternoon," Richard explained. "He collapsed in the shop. Doc's with him now, but he asked for you." Grant turned to Zara, concern etched on his face. "You can't ride in your condition." "I have to go to him," Zara insisted. "He's my father." "I'll hitch the wagon," Grant decided. "Richard, water your horse while I prepare." The journey to Trinity seemed interminable to Zara, despite Grant pushing the horses faster than was comfortable on the rough road. When they finally reached the apothecary, Dr. Pearson met them at the door. "Influenza, I believe," the elderly doctor told them. "Several cases in town this week. Your father's is severe, possibly pneumonia developing." "I want to see him," Zara said, moving toward the stairs. "Of course. But prepare yourself, the fever has him confused." Arthur lay in his bed, face flushed with fever, breathing labored. He opened his eyes when Zara took his hand, but his gaze was unfocused. "Eleanor," he murmured, using Zara's mother's name. "No, Papa, it's Zara," she said gently, pressing a cool cloth to his forehead. "Zara," he repeated, seeming to understand. "My girl, you came." "Of course I came." She fought back tears, alarmed by how ill he appeared. "Dr. Pearson says you need to rest." Arthur's eyes drifted to her swollen belly. "The baby, is it time?" "Not yet. A few more weeks." She forced a smile. "You need to get well to meet your grandchild." Arthur nodded weakly, then closed his eyes, exhausted by even this brief conversation. Dr. Pearson ushered Zara from the room. "He needs rest more than anything. I've given him medicine for the fever, but we must watch for the pneumonia, if his lungs fill with fluid." The doctor didn't need to finish the sentence. Zara knew the danger. "I'm staying," she told Grant. "I can't leave him like this." "Of course," Grant agreed without hesitation. "I'll make arrangements with Mrs. Peterson to use her spare room for us." For 3 days, they maintained a vigil at Arthur's bedside. Zara prepared herbal remedies to ease his breathing and reduce the fever, working alongside Dr. Pearson. Grant handled the practical matters, ensuring the apothecary remained closed with a notice explaining why, arranging for their extended stay in town, and sending word to the ranch hand he'd hired to care for the livestock. On the 4th night, Arthur's fever broke. By morning he was weak but lucid, able to recognize everyone and understand his situation. "You shouldn't be here in your condition," he told Zara, his voice hoarse but concerned. "Hush, Papa. Where else would I be?" Arthur's recovery was slow but steady. After a week, Dr. Pearson pronounced him out of danger, though complete recovery would take time. Zara was torn between staying to nurse him and returning to the ranch to prepare for the baby's arrival. "Go home," Arthur told her firmly when she expressed her concerns. "Edward is more than capable of running the shop, and Mrs. Peterson has volunteered to look in on me daily. Your baby needs you healthy and rested, not exhausted from nursing a cranky old man." "You're not old and only occasionally cranky," Zara replied with a smile. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely certain." Arthur squeezed her hand. "The best thing you can do for me is take care of yourself and my grandchild. I'll be fully recovered in time for the birth, I promise." Reluctantly, Zara agreed. She and Grant returned to the ranch, with a promise to visit again in a week to check on Arthur's progress. July brought intense heat and the final, uncomfortable days of Zara's pregnancy. She moved more slowly, finding even simple tasks exhausting in the summer temperatures. Grant hovered anxiously, ready to ride for the doctor at the first sign of labor. "The baby will come when it's ready," Zara assured him, though she too was eager for the waiting to end. 3 days after returning from a visit to her recovering father, Zara woke before dawn with a dull ache in her back. She shifted uncomfortably, trying not to wake Grant. The pain receded, and she drifted back to sleep. When she woke again, sunlight was streaming through the window, and Grant was gone, already out tending to morning chores. The backache had returned, stronger now and coming in waves. Zara recognized what was happening. Her time had come. She dressed carefully and made her way to the kitchen, determined to have breakfast ready when Grant returned. She was stirring a pot of oatmeal when a particularly strong contraction made her grasp the edge of the stove for support. Grant found her that way when he came in from the barn. One look at her face told him everything. "The baby?" he asked, crossing the room in 2 strides. Zara nodded. "It's starting, but slowly. There's time yet." Grant helped her to a chair, his expression a mixture of excitement and fear. "I'll ride for Dr. Pearson right away." "Not yet," Zara said, catching his hand. "First labors often take many hours. Have breakfast, then go. I'll be fine until you return." Reluctantly, Grant agreed, though he ate quickly and prepared to leave immediately after. Before mounting his horse, he knelt beside Zara's chair. "I hate leaving you alone." "I'm not alone," she said, placing his hand on her belly. "We're waiting for you together." Grant's journey to Trinity and back with the doctor took just over 3 hours record time for the distance. When they arrived, Zara's labor had progressed steadily. Dr. Pearson examined her and pronounced everything proceeding normally. "First babies take their time," he told the anxious couple. "We'll likely welcome this one by sunset." The doctor was right. As the afternoon shadows lengthened, Zara's labor intensified. Grant remained by her side, wiping her brow, holding her hand through contractions, and murmuring encouragement. "You're the strongest person I've ever known," he told her during a brief respite between pains. "I don't feel very strong right now," Zara admitted, exhausted. "Trust me," Grant said, kissing her damp forehead. "I've seen men face gunfire with less courage than you're showing today." Just as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the bedroom in golden light, Dr. Pearson announced it was time. The final stage of labor was intense but mercifully brief. With a last powerful effort from Zara, their child entered the world with a lusty cry. "A son," Dr. Pearson announced, quickly wrapping the squalling infant in a clean towel. "A fine, healthy boy." He placed the baby on Zara's chest, where the newborn immediately quieted, blinking in the soft lamplight. Grant stared in wonder at the tiny, perfect face. "Hello, Arthur," Zara whispered, using the name they had chosen to honor her father if they had a son. Grant reached out a tentative finger, which the baby grasped with surprising strength. "He's amazing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You're amazing." While Dr. Pearson tended to Zara, Grant cradled his son for the first time, marveling at the tiny features that somehow combined his own and Zara's. The baby gazed up at him with unfocused dark blue eyes, his small hand still clutching Grant's finger. "I promise to be the father you deserve," Grant whispered, too softly for the others to hear. "To love you and protect you always." Later, with Zara resting comfortably and little Arthur sleeping in the cradle Grant had made, Dr. Pearson prepared to depart. "You have a fine family, Westbrook," the elderly doctor said, clasping Grant's shoulder. "Cherish them." "Every day," Grant replied with conviction. Word of Arthur Galloway Westbrook's birth spread quickly through Trinity and the surrounding area. Visitors came bearing gifts and good wishes. Mrs. Peterson with tiny knitted garments, Sheriff Donovan with a hand-carved wooden horse for when the boy's older, and others with practical items for the new parents. Arthur Sr. insisted on being brought out to the ranch as soon as Dr. Pearson deemed him well enough to travel. His face when he first held his namesake was a study in joy. "He has your mother's eyes," Arthur told Zara, tracing a gentle finger over the baby's cheek. "And your father's strong chin," he added to Grant. "I'm just glad he has his mother's disposition," Grant replied with a smile. "The world doesn't need another stubborn Westbrook." The three adults laughed, and baby Arthur squirmed in his grandfather's arms as if joining in the family moment. As summer gave way to fall, life settled into a new rhythm centered around the baby's needs. Zara found motherhood both more challenging and more rewarding than she had imagined. Grant proved to be a devoted father, never hesitating to walk the floor with a fussy infant or change a soiled diaper. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, little Arthur sleeping contentedly in Zara's arms, Grant reflected on the journey that had brought them here. "If I hadn't decided to track those wolves that day," he said, "if you hadn't taken that shortcut through the woods, we might never have met," Zara finished. "I've thought about that too." Grant took her free hand, entwining their fingers. "I'm not a man who's had much faith in anything, but sometimes I wonder if some things are meant to be." Zara leaned against his shoulder, their son nestled between them. "Maybe they are, or maybe we make our own destiny by the choices we make. Either way, I'm grateful for every step that led us here." "As am I," Grant said softly. "As am I." The wolves that had once threatened Zara's life had, in a strange way, led her to the greatest happiness she had ever known. Life's dangers and blessings, she reflected, often came hand in hand like winter's cold that made the warmth of home all the sweeter. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, the Westbrook family remained on their porch, content in each other's company and in the life. They were building together a life born from a moment of peril in the snow, when a stranger had said, "Get behind me. Stay close," and in doing so had changed everything.